Alright guys, today's video is going to be all about transplanting fruit trees for their health and the success of our harvest. So let's get started. Hey guys, it's Phil from Earth Nails and Tales, where we show you how to do things in the garden the right way the first time. And we just finished planting our mini orchard, and now I want to show you how to transplant your own fruit trees. So we're out here on this beautiful fall day, and fall is the best time to be transplanting your fruit trees or your fruit shrubs. And the reason being is because, as we can see with this fig tree right here, it's starting to go dormant. And what happens is the tree takes all of its energy from its leaves and puts it into the plant to survive the winter. And what it's focusing on is putting its energy into its roots to create a stronger root system. And that is the reason why it's best to transplant your trees and shrubs in the fall. And I just want to say right from the start, this video isn't going to give you details on how to pick out your fruit trees, simply how to transplant them. But I do want to mention a few things first. When you're picking a fruit tree, make sure you do extensive research before you buy it. You need to be considering things like the amount of space, the type of pollinators it needs, water, sunlight, pest and disease control. So there's a lot of things that go into determining the type of fruit tree that you can have in your zone or your climate. So please, 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 for the health of the tree and the success of your harvest, do your research before you buy your trees. So now that you've picked out your ideal fruit tree for your area and you have them laid out properly spaced, we're going to start by digging the hole. So this tree I have already planted, but if you can look very closely, you can see this ring right here, and that's the root ball. So if you were to go out to the store, you'd most likely find a tree in a pot, and it would be sitting in soil. That's what we're going to be calling the root ball. When we dig our hole to transplant our tree, we want to make sure that hole is 3 times the size of that root ball. And the reason being is most trees have been sitting inside of that root ball for a large portion of its life. It may have even been in the ground and then dug up, which means its roots were cut and then put into that root ball. So the purpose of digging this size hole is to allow those roots that were cut to grow new, stronger roots in its new environment. So we want to dig this hole, and we're going to slowly backfill it in and spread those roots out the best we can, so that way the new roots have a nice soil to sink into, grow through, and then establish themselves here. And by the time they get to the edge of that hole that we're going to dig, they're going to be strong and established, and will have the strength to be able to push through that potentially more compacted native soil. So that is really the key here when you're transplanting your fruit trees. So when we're digging our hole, we want to make sure that we're using a flat-headed shovel and making those edges as steep as possible. The reason why you want to do this is you want to prevent the roots from spiraling in that hole, basically creating a giant pot. You want those roots to spread out into its new soil to make a stronger plant. Now, once your hole is dug, you want to make sure that we're prepping the root ball properly. So I'm just massaging the root ball here, and the reason why I'm doing that is just to get these roots that were contained in that container, in the pot, so that way they're not stuck in this mound of soil that they were existing in, and it'll allow them to spread out into its new environment and establish. So the reason why that we're planting the trees in the fall is because we want the tree to develop a strong root system. If I were to take the same tree and plant it in the spring, when it's trying to photosynthesize and produce energy for the whole plant, it's going to focus on leaf production rather than root production. So I know this tree is going to go dormant soon because we're heading into winter, and that means this tree is going to focus on developing its roots, which is going to make a stronger plant in the future. That we have the hole dug and the root ball prepped, we want to make sure that the tree is the right height. Ideally, you want the top of the root ball to be about 1 inch or 2 above your native soil. That will allow the roots to grow down into the new soil, and that's going to help anchor the tree even further. And as you can see here, once we have the tree properly positioned, I'm slowly backfilling the soil, putting in a little bit, spreading out those roots, pulling those roots out of that root ball, and then covering it with more soil, and just repeating this process until we work our way all the way up to the top of the root ball. The next thing I want to talk about is adding amendments to your soil when you're transplanting your fruit tree. And I'm against this because it actually increases the amount of transplant shock that your tree is going to go through. The more nutrition that you give it, it's going to force it to want to grow. And your nitrogen, your phosphorus, and your potassium, they all do different things. So depending on what you fertilize it, it's going to force the tree to try to grow new vegetation or start to fruit. And this isn't what you want to happen. You want the tree to do what it's going to do naturally and focus on its root development in the fall and the winter. So the only thing that I would do is maybe add a little bit of compost just to increase the composition of your soil and nothing else besides that. So now that we finished transplanting our fruit trees, we want to make sure we give a good solid layer, 1 to 2 inches of mulch, and then give it a good watering. We want to make sure that we're retaining the moisture in the soil for the first couple years of its life, watering at least 1 to 2 inches a week. This is going to help get those roots established, and it's going to give you a strong and happy plant years in the future. Alright guys, well I really hope you enjoyed this episode today on learning how to transplant your fruit trees. And remember, these tips are not only applicable to your fruit trees, they're applicable to any type of tree or any type of shrub. So please, please, please use these tips for the health of your plant and the success of your harvest. My name is Phil, this is Earth, Nails, and Tales. Hope you guys enjoy.